Good day, everyone. Here we are in Hilliers, British Columbia, the location of my good friend's home and clinic. And I'm talking, of course, about Emily Dudek. We have been studying Qigong together for a number of years, and we might have to, like, it's probably 6 years or something.
More.
Since pre-pandemic, anyway. So that's such a defining moment in our lives, and certainly in our studies, because the program we did together was interrupted, disturbed. We had to make concessions in order to complete in due time, despite the restrictions of the pandemic. Hello.
Hello.
So I understand that this is not always the most comfortable setting for you. So we're gonna just visit today and talk about Qigong. And so my name is Michel Duhaime. I have been in practice as an acupuncturist in BC for 25 years almost. And I now also include Qigong and inner bonding in my practice. And I've been curious to introduce Qigong, yes, Qigong to the broader populace, but more so using that opportunity to introduce practitioners from Vancouver Island. We have many people who work and do really good work, and work as valuable as what we hear sometimes online, and thinking that we can start exploring that together. So the opportunity today really is to just step into maybe how we got here in the first place, because we have different life startups, I think. Would you like to start?
Sure. How I got here in Qigong.
And Qigong, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think there's two layers to that. The first layer being that I always knew I wanted to be a therapist, even from when I was little. I knew I wanted to help people. Didn't always know what that looked like. So there was always this knowing in the background, probably largely influenced by my mom being a very supportive parent emotionally, and my exposure to a really powerful mentor, Pietro Bella, when I was little. So he showed me through experience, being the recipient, what it feels like to be supported in that way. So I think that opened my door to seek something like this in my life. And then in terms of Qigong itself, I actually stumbled into Chinese medicine by mistake on some level, taking a non-academic leave from university, a little bit mentally unstable and needing a break from traditional type of studying. And there was an acupressure course on. And then through acupressure, I found our teacher, Noel, who suggested medical Qigong. And for me, acupressure was really beautiful, but it felt like it was a piece of what I wanted to do. And what I really value about Qigong is that it's very comprehensive and it's so broad and deep in how it exposes its students to different levels of consciousness and ways of seeing the body. And it just felt more aligned with what I wanted to do.
And here we are today.
Yes.
So how long was your journey in Qigong then?
So I started acupressure in probably 2012 and then Qigong in 2013 or 14. So what are we, 2025? Yeah, so I think it's been 12 years or 13 years since I started studying Chinese medicine. So yeah, around 11 years of Qigong, being immersed in Qigong, not always in education, but a lot of it in education. It's taking me 3 years to write my doctorate thesis or more.
Oh, more, because it's not quite done yet,
That's
is it?
right.
Well, fortunately, there's no time limit on this, as far as I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fortunately and unfortunately, there's
Well,
no.
there are more things, important things to take care of, I hear right now. So
Yes.
that's, so my journey was quite a bit different. I grew up in a relatively conservative family in Quebec, small town, and with very little awareness of things spiritual. We grew up Catholic. I was baptized, and at age 11 or 12, I decided I had enough with that and essentially rebelled against everything spiritual. God, like, so for several years, um, I was quite uncomfortable with the word God or anything spiritual. And I've shared that with a number of friends before, but part of so I went on into science. I became a chemical engineer. I went into the military for 15 years. And that training actually really developed my logical mind. And to my surprise, and sometimes I don't know quite how to um, voice that properly to people, but actually acknowledging the spiritual dimension helps me make sense of things. All of a sudden, it allows me to make sense of the universe. Um, so yeah, so engineering, I stopped that in '93. Went on to studying Chinese medicine at acupuncture school after a brief foray in the possibility of becoming a naturopath. And that would have taken me for 4 years in Toronto, and it just didn't align with me. I just couldn't see myself spending 4 years in Toronto to learn about natural medicine. It was very counterintuitive
Mm-hmm.
for me. So completed Chinese medicine, acupuncture school in Victoria, went on to practice right away in 2001. And it's when I met Wendy Lang, who's part of the community that we are in now in the medical Qigong, so under the lineage of Jerry Allen Johnson, who's based in California. And I forget her exact words, but it conveyed to me the importance of Qigong.
Mm.
And what I discovered as I studied is like there's the everything that underlies or that foundation of Chinese medicine actually is really strong in Qigong. Like everything that we learn in Qigong supports everything that I've learned in Chinese medicine in the sense that without Qigong, the Chinese medicine is a little bit empty. Maybe the same way you found with acupressure, right?
Mm.
Um, so yeah, for me, the journey was about 12 years as well, and maybe 10 years. And I've since began to study inner bonding, and to my surprise, not my surprise, what I discovered is that the language I'd been using through the studies I'd done with Michael Greenwood, a medical doctor and acupuncturist in Victoria, who was probably the most influential teacher in my life. Um, I in my sessions, I'd come across concepts that were similar to what inner bonding teaches, and what inner bonding gives me now is the language that cements it all together. So between qigong and inner bonding and acupuncture, I feel very solid right now in my practice. Yeah,
Mm. Awesome.
right. So, so how do you see the benefits you bring to your community with the qigong? And I would invite you to maybe also, the training you did with Pietro Abella, like, was
Mm-hmm.
really formative for
Mm-hmm.
you, and it really fits into the qigong as well. So maybe, cover quickly how qigong and Pietro's work, and
Yeah.
you could name what it is. I forget now. Really serve your client base.
Sure. So yes, as Michelle mentioned, in addition to medical qigong, I've spent a fair amount of time studying psychosomatic therapy. It's under Pietro Bella. Body speak is what he called that. It's quite similar to IFS, internal family systems, where you're doing parts work, um, very heavily focused in trauma recovery and supporting the system to heal from some of those things that just were too overwhelming to process. So quite deep, very yeah, also quite comprehensive. There's a lot of somatic elements to that. He also was an energy medicine practitioner, so he incorporated that. That's how those two trainings went really well together. And I would say for me, the blend is really special, which you might also be finding with inner bonding,
Mm.
that learning how to work with parts of ourselves and to put words to it and learn how to work with the psyche alongside with energy medicine is pretty powerful, because it gives you a whole array of tools to work with whatever comes up, and in a lot of different languages that it shows up. So whether that's imagery, which would be more of a Qigong thing, or parts or inner child parts, it just kind of creates more of a, I guess, a wider toolkit to support how a client might show up and what their needs might be as they go into some of those deeper places, and help them make sense of when you go into broad, far out spiritual places. So it's just a beautiful combination. And so for me, what I notice when working with clients is, um, I think that there's actually just a few simple pieces that make a huge difference, and that is in both the study of something like inner bonding or IFS or Pietro's work, you learn how to hold a safe container for the psyche and parts. And with Qigong, you're expanding your consciousness of what a human being really is. And I feel like a huge part of what supports my clients is that the presence that I bring to the room and what that creates as a safe container. So not as much what I'm doing as I'm doing it, but also, when I'm holding someone's heart, I have all of the knowledge of what Qigong has offered me, all of the knowledge of what Pietro has offered in my own life experience. So as I'm holding that with my hand, I have all of that behind that presence in my hand. So I feel like Qigong offers this really beautiful, supportive, safe container in that knowledge before you even apply the tools. Um, so that's a huge piece. I hear a lot that it feels really safe. And no matter what comes up, it feels comfortable for me to support. There's not a lot of things that make me feel uncomfortable that come into the room because of that bigger picture understanding, and those two streams of education. Um, I would say also they're both very empowering ways to work with people. So supporting people to understand their body differently and that they have power over it, power over how they heal and move forward. So um, I would say there's a lot of reclaiming responsibility for one's health, um, expanding consciousness around who they are as a being, and that can put things into perspective. Um, and maybe like simplifying things, realizing that there's a lot we can do with our own intention, imagination, and self awareness that doesn't need our external world to change. Um, so I don't know if that's a bit broad. If that's
Well, and that's how we're going to keep it today, because we're not stepping into any healing modalities. Or although, um, as a second part to this video today, we're going to do a little bit of simple qigong exercises. Um, and maybe what I'll cover now, and then I'll invite you to contribute after. So, we're using the term qigong here, and I understand that there's a general populace understanding of what it is in certain circles. People are more familiar with Tai Chi, and so the movements are sometimes quite similar. The Qigong that Emily and I learn is actually a medical Qigong, in the sense that the exercises are specifically designed to help people correct in states of imbalance in their life, illness, illness states. So this is what we've learned and will share in our practice. But I'm becoming, though, curious as I observe other traditions and other teachers. The Chinese have been around for a long time. They're an ancient culture that are very much steep in traditions and also folklore, and sometimes a little bit of you call that when they in myths and storytelling. And as I observe what's happening, and especially online right now, there's some advertising on 7 minutes a day of Tai Chi, and your life is going to change. I suppose it's possible, uh, but what I will allow grace to them in this is that the intent of what we do in our life, and in particular in our exercises. So Qigong is a set of exercise. The intent is very important, and part of the intent is created by the story that is told around this. So one of my favorite exercises I now call frog bouncing on lily pad, because it actually conveys the right image. And so, yeah, it's not the way we learned it. Yeah. And yet, when I'm going to be sharing this in class now, there's a wisdom about this, the way I describe it, though, that is actually closer to how the exercise is done. And it is something I want to share with you at some point. When the exercise is done correctly, it's not as tiring as how we learned it at school. Right?
Okay.
Right. So Qigong really is about moving the body. We all need this, and even more so as we age. It's easy enough to be sedentary, especially now that we have all these electronic tools at our disposal. We don't even have to go to the next room to watch a movie. We just carry it with us all day if we want. The radio used to be on, the phone, the radio, but they were all attached to the wall somehow. So sedentary lifestyles have always been recognized as deleterious for health, and it's certainly true right now. So movement induced by Qigong or Tai Chi, or encouraged by Qigong and Tai Chi, is really important. And then what the story in the exercise conveys helps to direct the mind to address the issues where blockages are in the body. And so people are familiar with meridians, and sometimes it's a bit of a nebulous concept. And so I've been reading and opening my understanding of what meridians are through some of the work of Janet Hadlock. And she studied with somebody who's pre-traditional Chinese medicine theory. So what is now known and taught at times as classical Chinese medicine. And they talked about bands of fascia. And fascia is very well understood in modern days. It's well researched. If anything, it's better understood than meridians. So moving our body helps with lymph flow. It helps with venous return. It activates and stretches the fascia, so it activates electrical conduction in the body. So those simple movements, along with the stories we tell, are really powerful at helping a person change states of imbalance in their bodies. What do you think?
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. It makes a huge difference. Um, do you have like a specific question about it?
Well, not necessarily. This is, for me, it's a new awareness, this storytelling, right? That right. So we talk about the meridians, for instance, as being a liver meridian.
Right.
And at school, certainly at Chinese acupuncture school, then when we treat, we use the meridian or the stomach meridian, but all the points on stomach meridian that are on the chest help with breathing, and that never made sense to me.
I see.
Right, because the function of the stomach meridian does not include breathing patterns. And yet all the points that are here on the chest, especially on the ribs, they specifically address things going on within the rib cage, which is much more in line with what a fascia would do, right? And nerves would do. So my sense more and more is that the stories that are built around this is to help us remember how to do the exercise, help us remember what it is that we're addressing with this, right? I mean, the liver meridian starts in the foot. It's a powerful meridian, but there's a branch that circles the genitals. Well, sure, but if it's a fascia band, all of a sudden it makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? So, and so this is me, the logical ex-engineer that looks at energy flowing. And I know very well that, so the gallbladder meridian, for instance, zigzags. And here in the forehead, it does almost a 360 turnaround. There's nothing in any energy flow on Earth that does that unless there's a wire. It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, you could see maybe lightning. It will zigzag this way, but it's going from here to there.
Yeah.
And it's finding the path of least resistance. That's why it's zigzagging.
Yeah.
Right? So we could argue maybe that this is a path of least resistance. What Janice Hadlock teaches, though, is that no, this is a band of fascia, and all these points are part of this band that is flowing down the side of the body all the way to the foot. Well, that makes sense. Now it flows not just in my body, but in my brain too.
Yes.
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 It's very useful for me.
Well, I think like to add to the story and the richness with that, I think maybe it's similar to what you're saying, maybe an addition to what you're saying is I feel, especially maybe for some more than others, it can be a really powerful tool at connecting to how that meaning relates to you personally.
Right.
So if we don't have connection to what it is we're healing, sometimes it's a bit harder. It's just a mental exercise. It's harder to get um, how would I describe that? Because if you're doing a qigong exercise and you're not in touch with how that might relate to you, your personal life, what blocks you might have, what traumas, stresses, challenges are present in your body, then it's a little bit hard to connect to. So by having a story or something that you can kind of relate to, it can bring you into what it is that's happening in you more easily.
Right.
That's something like when I'm teaching qigong, which is very rare because I don't do as much of the physical practice as I do the table work. Um, I like to include a lot of the story because I like inviting people to connect with, we love to connect things and to make things relevant. And so if there's a story that's about like the clearing the illusions and then gathering from the water and the kidney exercise, someone might be able to then relate that to something going on in their life, which might bring them into their experience more deeply. So, meaning is an interesting one. It can be a little trap, but it can also be something that helps us connect with ourselves deeper and actually become more authentic with what's going on. So, we can make meaning out of too many things and get a little bit stuck in loops. But if there's, it can help connect us deeper to our experience, which I guess, something I might add with the stories or the folklore or the pieces that come along with the practice.
Great. So the other advantage that I see in Qigong, especially when it comes to the exercises, is I've been really clear since the beginning of my practice that I don't want to be perceived as a practitioner as the one with all of the answers. And what I tend to say to my clients is like, well, the only expertise I can claim with 100% certainty in here, almost, is what I know about acupuncture and the points. When it comes to their body, to your body, so the body of a client, I can claim to have an idea of what a headache feels like or a stomach ache, but it's based entirely on my life experience, on how I experience this world. So for me to proclaim or to suggest that when a person says I have an acute pinpointing a headache throbbing right here, I have a sense of what they mean, but I always ask them to describe it to me. So sorry for their interruption here. So I was uh, making my point that lasting improvements in one's health always involve a direct participation by the client, and in that participation, a change in how they view themselves, how they view life, how they view the situation that brought them into the clinic.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So unless you got something you want to add on this, I was feeling ready for us to step into practice. So I'll give you the floor for a moment. Is there anything else you want to bring today? Some insight from your experience, professional experience?
Maybe just that I think that that's a powerful point that's worth seconding, that um, we can't claim to know what's going on for a client, even if and I think that's one of the most important parts of being um, a really, I guess, one of the skills that's really important in being a therapist is recognizing that no matter how similar someone's experience seems to be to yours, it is our job to not overlay our experience onto our client and to fully appreciate the wisdom that's happening in their body. We can use our experience as tools and as wisdom to how to ask the right questions, but to never overlay that. And I think that that's really powerful because you're completely trusting the client and their body to move whatever it is and however it's showing up for them. And the wisdom that's there is so precious, and it's like one of the things that I try to achieve as cleanly as possible, and I feel kind of is the foundation of everything that you just said, is inviting the client to be their own source of wisdom so that they are empowered, and that sometimes it is uncomfortable if you're not using a painkiller or some sort of antidepressant or something like that. And also, though, to respect that everybody's system is ready for certain levels of, um, I guess, sobriety of how they're seeing their system. Sometimes the nervous system isn't ready to see the full picture at once. And so that's okay too. That, like, following whatever pace and trusting, I guess, as a therapist, you have to trust your client as much as they have to trust you, or trust the unfolding. And it's a two-way street. And so, yeah, just wanted to second and expand on that part.
I would say actually that their trust in you will depend mostly on how you trust them. Because,
And yeah,
yeah, because that's not usually the experience in a medical doctor's office, right? And that's a generalization. So my apologies to those doctors who behave differently.
yeah, there's
Yeah,
lots of different people out there.
yeah. So we're going to step into the exercises now. Look for more of these videos. I don't know how often Emily and I will gather, but after our discussion today, I'm thinking it might be interesting to keep exploring. But once I get this ball rolling, that there will be videos with other health practitioners sharing their wisdom, their expertise, their experience. The idea is to present these people, like to show that they come from everyday life. They're not, most of them will never be Gabor Mates or Jerry Allen Johnsons or all these other big names we see, and yet they do great things in their community. So looking forward to more sharing. We're back, ready to share with you some of our favorite exercises. And so Emily will start. So we're only sharing one exercise. It's a way to demonstrate what Qigong and medical Qigong is in particular. We're not going to go into many details today, but it's to show how simple the exercise are and how accessible they are to most people. Right? So the floor is yours.
Okie dokie. Yeah, my favorite exercise, I'll lead up with a really common exercise that we do called bringing down the heavens, which is just a great way to kind of clear off any static from the day, anything you might be carrying before you move into practice. And we typically do that multiple times throughout a practice. So, not exactly teaching, but I'll guide as I go a little bit here. Um, so starting with bringing down the heavens before we move into my favorite practice or exercise. Your feet are about hip width apart and just standing straight. Taking a breath, and then we're going to use our hands and imagine gathering earth on the inhale, reaching up, gathering heaven energy, still on the inhale, and on the exhale, washing down the front of the body, clearing any tension, stress, ideas, energy, the front all the way down into the earth. And we're going to repeat that 3 times. Inhaling earth, heaven, exhaling, this time imagining washing the back of the body, tension, stress, stagnation, all the way down into the earth. 3rd time, inhaling. And then this time exhaling, imagine bringing that energy through the center of the body, clearing the head, the thoughts, the brain, mind, all the way through all the organs of the body and emotions, anything inside, all the way down to the earth. Just feeling that settle. I always like to check in and just see how that feels, like what's changed between exercises, because that's a pretty cool thing to do. Okay, so now we'll move into one of my favorite Qigong exercises, which is actually a postural exercise instead of a movement. So we'll return to what we call Wuji posture with our feet hip width apart and our body in a straight alignment, bones stacked on top of each other. And then this is called immortal post, where we bring our hands up in front of us like this. And essentially, this practice is to stand in this posture. We eventually stretched our capability to stand in this posture for quite some time in our doctoral studies. And the reason I love this posture so much is that it is a really beautiful invitation to assess where you're out of balance, where your body isn't in alignment. Because when you are in what we call Wuji posture or in proper alignment, this feels quite effortless. And if you're not in proper alignment, it can feel quite arduous. And it can be quite tricky because depending on the angle of your feet, depending on if you have any tension or you're holding too much or anything's pinching, this can be more difficult. So it's a nice invitation to go through the whole body and just see where you might be slightly out and correct little tiny corrections, moving your feet in and out, posture forward and back to find that perfect alignment. Kind of like balancing a stone, how people balance stones on that tiny tip point, and then eventually you find that alignment where it stays upright no matter if the wind is blowing. That's sort of what we're doing in this posture. So I'll just stand here for a few minutes, taking some breaths and just making some of those little adjustments, getting that hip angle correct, softening the knees, checking the alignment of the spine, softening the shoulders, and ultimately feeling yourself rooted into the earth. And I'll keep it short just because a lot of this is such an internal exercise. Essentially, depending on how long we hold this for can build up quite some energy in your body. So we sometimes do a squeezing exercise where you sip and you tense every part of your body, tensing a lot, sipping in more. And then you release at the end of the posture, just to release any final bits of tension that may have occurred, depending on how long you're standing. And I'll just do bringing down the heavens one more time. Inhaling earth, washing down the front. And when you're cleansing, eyes open. Washing down the back. Third time. Washing through the middle. That's a little piece of my favorite exercise.
Let's go into a variation of bringing down the heavens. And this one is known as Heavenly Fountain and Earth's Wellspring. And the importance of this is it helps us recognize that we, as human beings, live in between this heavenly world that surround us, and most clearly at night when we can see the heavens. That has been a mystery and a source of wonderment for pretty much since we've been humans. And then the earth, where our feet are, where we experience who we are in the bodies. Both of these dimensions are true. And yet we live in between them in our heart, from our heart. This is very much central to TCM teaching, to traditional Chinese medicine and Qigong. Okay, so heavenly fountain. So as you breathe in, let your arms come through the center here, and here gathering all this energy from the heavens. And imagine coming it down around you like a rain on the out breath. Let your legs be part of this exercise. And imagine like your fingers reaching into the sky and inviting the rain to fill the spaces around you. Breathing in here, breathing out. Breathing in. So of course, if you're in an environment where it's not that easy to connect to the natural forces or the natural environment around you, you can imagine, just like we talked about earlier on, imagining being on the ocean, say, by the ocean, in a desert, where the air is open, clear, clean, pristine. This is what you want to fill the space around you with. One last time. And letting your arms rest by your side. So now we reverse this. Earth's wellspring. So now imagine that you're sinking your fingers into the earth. And on the in-breath, you gather all this earth energy. And again, let it come down in the spaces around you. On the out-breath. Again. So it's okay to include your legs. Make this a whole body experience, exercise. And then one more time. Again, letting your arms come to a rest by your side. And noticing what it feels like at the end of this exercise to be a human being, with the understanding that you are always connected to the earth. This is really easy for most of us. And always exposed to the energies coming from the heaven. That one is easier to forget about. Okay, thank you. We'll see you again.
I'm going to add one more thing.
Here we go.
Michel is no exception. Probably one of my most influential buddies in therapy. So I just want to add that in.
I didn't pay for this. Thank you.
Incredible.